Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 Twitter handle. You know the job by now. And I'm joined today by Alison McConnell. How are you, Alison?
Very well, thank you. Enjoying some of the nice April sunshine.
Indeed. Now, we'll do the housekeeping as we always do. You see along the bottom there, you subscribe to the Celtic Way. It's £1 for 2 months. You can win with a chance of winning a £100 gift card. And if you subscribe, you'll hit the subscribe button, obviously, and it'll be www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And if you do, you'll be able to read one of my articles today about prioritising Cameron Carter-Vickers signing over Jota. And you would also be able to read James Daly's article on Matt O'Reilly now featuring for the Celtic title running at the expense of Reo Hatate. Now, I wanted to ask you, Alison, what do you think about that from James? Obviously, if you go onto the website, you'll be able to read that. It's a really good column from James. But what's your thoughts on that, on Matt O'Reilly coming in for Reo Hatate?
First of all, I think Matt O'Reilly has been a revelation since he arrived. I think he's been an excellent signing. I think he's made an impact that maybe few people would have envisaged, just given where he was coming from and his age and experience. I think he's made a seamless arrival into the Celtic first team. Reo Hatate, I think, looks a bit jaded. He does look tired in recent games. It's maybe no real surprise given the volume of games he's played. He'd played a full season in Japan and had then come over. I thought he looked out on his feet at times on Sunday in the Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden. I think both have something to offer, to be honest with you. I think sometimes Matt O'Reilly and Tom Rogic, when they're in the same midfield together, we've maybe seen the balance that just maybe isn't quite right in the middle. So I'm not sure if it would work with a Callum McGregor, Tom Rogic and Matt O'Reilly. I think maybe have to tweak it in some way just to get the balance across the middle of the park. But I would certainly take the point. I think Reo Hatate did look tired, but I think you have to applaud the impact that both of these players have had, and I think probably both will be utilised in the next 5 games that are coming up. And I think both have something to offer. I think you've seen that since January, that both provide a creative outlet, both have goals and assists in them, and I think both will be utilised.
Yes, indeed. Now, going to a couple of comments here, Alison, and Gerard Coyle says, happy for Matt O'Reilly for the title running. Japanese boys are starting to show the season and a half that they've played. Michael Quinn says O'Reilly has earned a start, whether it's for Reo or Tom. Chilpill's more to the point. Hatate is knackered. And as you said, we were watching it on Sunday, and we thought there was signs of fatigue there, wasn't there?
I think
Hatate.
To be honest, I think the whole team looked lethargic. I thought there was an inertia about the performance and about the squad. I thought they looked leggy. I'm not sure why that would be. I'm not sure if it'd been a particularly intense week of training in the build-up, or if it's just a mental lethargy going into a game of that magnitude. I'm not sure, but I thought as a collective, I thought Celtic did look quite tired, and it jarred, I think, just because they've not appeared that way in recent weeks. I thought there was an energy and a tempo about Celtic. I'm sure it's something that will be considered this week. I'm sure it will have been discussed. I'm sure it's not gone unnoticed. Whether or not that's just the way that Rangers played and the way that Rangers pressed Celtic, that they really stopped them from playing their game. I don't know if maybe that just contributed to the suggestion that they looked tired, but certainly I think there's a week to gather their thoughts, a week to prepare, and I think the focus now will just be on trying to regroup and trying just to make sure that Sunday is confined to a singular disappointment and that it doesn't lend itself to any encouragement given to Rangers in terms of the title race.
Jill Pill comes back and says Hatate will be brilliant next season. But it was just interesting because of the fact that Matt O'Reilly, when he came on against St Johnstone, scored 2 fantastic goals, and he had an impact when he came on against Rangers at Hampden on Sunday. I don't know what you thought about that, but I thought Celtic lifted it for a while, for about a 10-minute, 15-minute period when he initially came on.
Yeah, I thought he did make an impact when he came on. I thought he found pockets of space. I think he's very good at that. I think he definitely is. He's a clever player. I think he's an intelligent player. He's a very athletic player. I think he did offer something when he came on, particularly at the stage of the game when he came on. I think he'll be used. I think there's no doubt that over the course of the next 5 games, I think you'll see plenty of him. And I think the same would go for Rogic and Hatate. I think all these guys will be required as Celtic push for the final 5 games.
Now, Celtic B played Rangers B in the Glasgow Cup semi-final yesterday, Alison, and they lost on penalties. But it was more notable for the fact that Christopher Jullien played, Mikey Johnson played, and Karamoko Dembele also played. As I say, they went down on penalties after a 2-2 draw. Now, do you see any of those guys making their way into the reckoning for the title run-in? Or do you think it's just too much at stake now to consider fringe players like that?
Yeah, I think you might see Mikey Johnson and Christopher Jullien and Karamoko Dembele in the squad for some of these games. Christopher Jullien is maybe the most interesting one. I think at the beginning of the season, it looked as though we'd be back September, October. There was a real clamour for him to come back in. But I think what you would have to say is that Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers have really cemented that defensive partnership. So I think it's been difficult for Christopher Jullien to get back in. There's also been question marks over how fit he is and how prepared he was to come back in and contribute at first team level. He was in that Scottish Cup game he featured against Raith Rovers, and then he seemed to fall off again. I'm not sure whether that's because of fitness issues or just because of the consistency of the 2 centre halves that now seem to be in ahead of him. But I think much will depend really on how the games play out and where Celtic find themselves maybe in 2 or 3 weeks down the line. I think if things go according to Celtic's plan and they bank points at certain times and cross the line in terms of the title, then I think, there would be a number of players that you would expect maybe to get some game time between now and the end of the season. But I think ultimately the focus really is in just collecting themselves and ensuring that there's no slip up at Dingwall, and then obviously you have the huge game against Rangers that comes in the back of that at Celtic Park.
Sure. I mean, I didn't see the Glasgow Cup semi-final yesterday. I'll rely on others in the group chat if they saw it and how Jullien performed. Do you know how he performed, Alison? Did you see it? Or
no, it's not a game that I was covering. I wasn't aware of it. I obviously saw the team lines coming through, and I thought it was notable that Christopher Jullien was playing. And I think there just has been interest around his situation. I think at the start of the season, if people had said, he's not going to feature at all, he'll play in one Scottish Cup tie, I think people would have feared the worst for Celtic's defence because the perception was that he was probably the strongest centre half available at the club. He's missed an awful lot of football now when you consider that he went out last December. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible amount of time to be out for, and I just wonder how long now it really takes to get up to speed after 16 months of being sidelined. Yeah.
Now, you wrote a piece about it, Alison, saying it's all about Dingwall, really, isn't it? On Sunday, Celtic just need to kind of regroup and refocus and just remain at the top of the table. It's still the same, isn't it? Nothing's changed. And I think Ange Postecoglou said that after the semi-final defeat, that nothing's changed in terms of the league race. They've got a series of games now, which if they can get it over the line, they will be champions.
Yeah, yes and no. I think it's inarguable that nothing has changed in terms of the points perspective and where Celtic are. What the shift is in perception, really. Yeah. It's about whether or not Celtic feel the breath of Rangers on their necks and how they cope with that. I think the psychology of sport is very interesting. I think when you're in this position, it requires a single-mindedness, a focus, and I think if you get jittery and you start looking over your shoulder, then that can be affected. And I think now there is interest in how Celtic handle that pressure, all the more so because Rangers play on Saturday. Yep. They'll play Motherwell the day earlier so that they have extra time to prepare for the Europa League semi-final, which I think is the right call. I think that it's a fair thing to do. But I think what Celtic have to cope with now is all eyes on them and how do they respond to a defeat that I think would have felt particularly demoralising. They went into the game at Hampden as big favourites. I think lots of us expected them to sustain the performance levels that you'd seen over the course of recent weeks. And I think when that falters, then there is a question mark about what the response is, and it's up to Celtic to regroup and go again. But I think there is a pressure that comes with that because of the manner of the performance. I think it was very below par. I think there's an argument to say it's maybe the poorest performance of the season in a domestic sense. It was particularly poor, certainly since those early kind of chaotic weeks of the campaign.
Yeah, Callum McGregor was quick to point out that that's why he got the huddle right immediately after the game with the players, and he said that one game wasn't going to derail their season, and that was a message he instructed to the players. And also said that, I guess it is about how Celtic bounce back from that setback, isn't it, Alan, and see the mentality and see how they cope, because it was the first time in 34 games that they'd lost, so they've not been used to it.
Yeah, and I think there were parallels there with Brendan Rodgers. I think when Celtic's long unbeaten domestic run came to an end at Tynecastle one day, the back of a 4-0 win, Brendan Rodgers gathered the squad in a kind of similar rallying call. I think there were echoes of that on Sunday when Callum McGregor took them into the huddle, and it was a very public, demonstrative way
display, wasn't it?
Of saying, okay, we take our medicine and we go again. But what you saw was just a willingness to refocus. And I think Callum McGregor, has stepped into the captaincy role with ease this season. I think he's been a commendable leader. I think he's had an impressive campaign, and I think you see the maturity in his leadership. I think it will have been necessary this week too, and I thought it was interesting. Actually, we spoke to John Hartson after the game, and he was saying similarly, and just pointing to the fact that this week guys like Callum McGregor, experienced players in the dressing room, will know that when you lose a game to Rangers, the post-mortem drags. The post-mortem lasts all week. There is an awful lot of noise that comes on the back of it, and how important players like Callum McGregor are, just in saying, right, you have to mute that and you have to just focus on performance levels. But I think there's no question that Celtic go to Dingwall on Sunday with a bit of pressure on them, because it becomes a question of how do you respond, and can you cope with the pressure now just of leading the pack going into the final 5 games.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. Now, another snippet, Alison, that came about of yesterday, and myself and Sean spoke about it, was Sean Maloney left Hibs, and then one of the immediate favourites to be installed for the job was John Kennedy. And is that something you see happening? Do you see John Kennedy leaving? I know John Kennedy's always had ambitions to be a manager, but do you see him leaving Celtic at this moment in time to go to Hibs?
I think probably there's only one person who can answer that. But I would suspect that just Ron Gordon's conduct over the last 4 months might make people wary of stepping into the job. I think you could argue that Hibs have made 3 big mistakes. I didn't think Jack Ross merited losing his job on the back of where they were. I thought that was the first mistake. The second mistake, I think, is when you set your stall out to bring in an up-and-coming manager, a manager who's walking into his first senior post, that you've got to accept that there'll be some kind of learning on the job, that there'll be mistakes along the way, that he needs a bit of time to get it right. So I think there's a mistake then when you don't allow him that time to go and impose himself and take a bit of time just to find his feet and to exact the changes that he wanted. So I think John Kennedy would possibly be very wary of that post at the minute, because it seems quite clear about what is wanted and what is needed, and I'm not sure that there's much support there to deliver it. So I suspect that he might be quite cautious. And I think also that it'd be fairly well known that John Kennedy and Sean Maloney have quite a close friendship. I think since their days coming through the ranks at Celtic, I think they still have a relationship and a friendship. And I'm sure he would probably be quite stunned as well at the lack of time that Sean was given to go and try and cut his teeth at Easter Road. And there's an argument to say that Easter Road and jobs like the Hibs job or the Aberdeen job, it's not the job for a manager who's still wet behind the ears. But I think once you decide to go down that route, then I think you have to be realistic about the time frame in which you expect results to come.
Yeah, Neil Morrison says Kennedy shouldn't go anywhere near Hibs. Just look at the way Maloney was treated. You were alluding to that there yourself. I tell you what, I did notice on Sunday. I noticed Kennedy was very, very vocal because he approached Stephen McLean, the fourth official, many, many times and was berating him and had a right go at him about the few of the challenges. So it's the first time I've seen Kennedy really, really animated in a long time, Alison.
Yeah, I had noticed that too, actually. I think just his frustrations at some of the physicality that was on show. I think he was irked at some of the decisions. I think we've spoken about it. I think it was an erratic performance from Bobby Madden, and I think I think John Kennedy was quite clear at times and just showing how annoyed he was getting at the ebb and flow of the game.
Now, the final thing I want to touch upon with Alison, myself and Sean spoke about, just wanted to get your thoughts on yesterday. There was a vote taken and Scottish football will welcome VAR in December. What's your thoughts on that? Do you have any real major thoughts on it, or you can share them with the group?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it makes sense to come into line with other leagues across Europe. I think it helps the process of getting to the right decision. I don't think it's a catch-all. I don't think it will solve all the problems because something that's so subjective comes down to interpretation. I still think that there is an argument for improving referee performance and maybe looking towards bringing in full-time officials to making it a proper career choice and trying to raise the level that you see, because I think across the board you see some very poor officiating performances, and I think anything that can be done to support that would help. So I think VAR will help with the process. It's not going to be perfect because I think the same people essentially are going to be interpreting decisions. So I think there is still ample room for controversy and for discourse over decisions. But I think overall it enhances your hand in trying to come to the right decision.
Are you a VAR or a VAR person, Alison? Do you call it either or?
I have never thought about what way I would describe it. I think probably VAR, but
VAR, we'll go with that. Yes.
I've no idea.
I only said that because Arthur Taylor has put up VAR. I don't know if that means VAR or VAR. I've kind of flicked between the both, so if anyone has a definitive, I'll gladly hear their thoughts on it. We'll keep building up to Dingwall in the days coming. It's a massive game for Celtic at the weekend, knowing that Rangers play 24 hours before them. That, as you said, Alison, will bring its own pressure. We'll discuss team lineups and all that on the Thursday and the Friday. But thanks for your contribution today. Really enjoyed that. And I hope you guys have a lovely day. It looks like a nice sunny day. So if you can enjoy it, enjoy it. And we'll speak to you in the fullness of time. Same back channel tomorrow. And as always, a reminder at the bottom, £1 a month for 2 months. You know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. You could win a £100 gift card. Thanks, guys.